Blake Shelton never expected to witness a moment like this. A wave of new country artists rising so fast that they're jumping straight from breakout albums to packing entire stadiums night after night. For a guy who spent years grinding through bars, dance halls, and tiny stages barely big enough for a mic stand, watching today's stars soar at lightning speed feels almost unreal. And when Blake recently opened up about what's happening in country music, his honesty revealed something surprising. The touring world has shifted so dramatically that even one of the genre's biggest names can barely recognize it anymore. What he's seeing now isn't just growth, it's a complete rewrite of what it means to be a country superstar.
Blake Shelton has seen nearly everything in country music, but even he admits he wasn't prepared for what's happening right now. When he looks at artists like Luke Combs and Bryan dominating the touring world, he sounds almost stunned. Not because they're talented, but because they're moving at a speed he didn't even know was possible. He said watching these guys sell out stadiums, not just for one night, but for multiple nights in a row, feels like witnessing a brand new chapter of country music unfolding right in front of him. To Blake, stadiums used to be this rare milestone that only the biggest legends touched after years of climbing the ladder. But the new generation, they're leaping straight to the top with one powerful album and a fan base that knows every single track the moment it drops. It's a level of momentum that just didn't exist when Blake was starting out, and the way he talks about it, you can hear both admiration and disbelief mixing together. He even pointed out that while Garth Brooks achieved stadium status, he had a long runway to get there. Today, that runway has practically disappeared. Artists are launching from zero to massive stages in what feels like an instant, powered by streaming, viral moments, and fan communities that form almost overnight. Blake's reaction makes it clear. This isn't just impressive, it's redefining what a big break looks like in country music. And as Blake keeps watching the younger generation reach heights he never imagined, he starts revealing something deeper about how the entire industry has shifted, and why it leaves even a veteran like him taking a step back to process what's happening next.
When Blake looks back at the height of his touring career, there's one era that always stands out. The moment everything seemed to click at once. It was during his Based on a True Story run, when songs like Boys Round Here were exploding everywhere, and crowds were showing up louder than ever. That was the period when he felt the momentum pushing him into a new level, the kind of level where every night felt bigger than the last. One night in particular still sits at the top of the list for him, the Wrigley Field show. For Blake, stepping onto that historic field and seeing it packed with fans was a surreal, this is really happening moment. Selling out a venue of that size wasn't just a career win, it was validation that years of grinding through small gigs had led to something massive. He calls it the pinnacle for a reason. It was the night he realized he had become one of the top arena acts in country music. But instead of pretending he stayed at that peak forever, Blake speaks about it with refreshing honesty. He admits that after reaching that high point, things leveled out. He didn't keep climbing into the stadium every night category, but he also never needed to. He found his lane as a reliable arena performer, and to him, that alone was incredible. Most artists never get to touch that level, let alone hold on to it for years. Listening to him talk, you can hear that he isn't bitter, and he's not comparing himself to the new crop of stars. He's simply acknowledging that the industry kept evolving, and he settled into a pace that felt real to him. And what comes next in his story reveals just how dramatically the landscape around him shifted while he was blazing his own trail. Blake Shelton has watched the entire music industry flip almost overnight. And when he talks about it, you can hear how shocked he is by the speed of today's rise. Back in his era, you needed years of radio singles, constant touring, and a mountain of promotion before you even dreamed of touching a stadium stage. But now, one breakout album can launch an artist straight into the biggest venues in the country. And Blake can't help but point out how dramatically different things are. He says the biggest shift comes down to how people discover music. Streaming changed everything. Instead of waiting for a single to hit radio, fans can hear an entire album the second it drops, and if it connects, it spreads like wildfire. Songs don't need radio rotation to become anthems anymore. Fans learn every lyric on their own, share clips online, and build massive followings long before these artists ever hit the road. By the time a new performer schedules their first tour, the crowd already knows every track front to back. Blake even mentioned that this is why artists like Luke Combs and Bryan can move so fast. Their albums don't just perform well, they turn into movements. People stream them non-stop, create fan communities around them, and show up ready to scream every word as if they've been following them for a decade. That kind of momentum didn't exist when Blake started, and he admits it outright. The demand for today's rising stars hits a level he never imagined possible. And with this new wave of music consumption reshaping the entire industry, Blake realizes that the old rules don't apply anymore. What used to take years of grinding can now happen in a single breakthrough moment, and that shift sets the stage for everything else he's about to reveal about touring, fame, and how fast country music is evolving. Before the big stages and radio hits, Blake Shelton lived a version of country music that barely exists anymore. When he talks about those early years, there's this mix of pride and disbelief, because the grind he went through feels like a different world compared to how artists rise today. Back then, the club scene was alive. Dusty dance halls, loud bars, neon-lit rooms packed with people who came to two-step, drink, and hear whoever passed through town. Blake wasn't headlining arenas, he was just chasing a dream, one crowded bar at a time. He remembers those nights with almost surprising fondness. He played anywhere that would have him, from legendary spots like Billy Bob's to tiny venues most fans have never heard of. Some shows were so thrown together that the stage was just a wooden board raised a few inches off the floor in the corner of a restaurant. Other nights, he'd be performing next to bowling lanes while people rolled strikes between songs. But to him, none of that mattered. He had a song on the radio, a band behind him, and a reason to hit the road every night. The pay wasn't great, sometimes $5,000 for the whole crew, but the expenses swallowed almost all of it. After paying for the bus, the trailer, the crew guys, and his band, he barely took anything home. But he didn't complain. He wasn't chasing money, he was chasing a shot. And for a young artist with a single climbing the charts, just waking up in a new town and stepping onto any stage felt like winning. What makes his memories powerful is how different that journey looks compared to the new generation. Today's stars can launch from their bedrooms straight into sold-out arenas thanks to streaming and viral moments. Blake had to earn every inch of progress the hard way, show after show, town after town. And as he shares those stories now, you can hear how much he values that rugged climb because it shaped everything that came after. For Blake Shelton, the early grind wasn't glamorous. It wasn't private jets, luxury buses, or massive crews. It was the bare-bones version of life on the road, the kind of touring that tests whether an artist actually wants this life or just likes the idea of it. And when Blake looks back on those days, he doesn't sugarcoat it. He remembers what it really felt like to scrape by night after night, pouring everything into shows that barely paid enough to keep him moving. He talks about those years with a mix of toughness and nostalgia because nobody handed him a shortcut. When a venue paid him $5,000, it sounded huge to outsiders, but the reality was brutal. By the time he paid the bus driver, covered gas, kept the trailer running, handled the bills, paid his tiny crew, and took care of his band, he was left with almost nothing. Some nights, he'd walk off stage with barely enough to get to the next town. But he wasn't chasing a paycheck. He was chasing a chance to prove himself. And the struggle didn't stop at money. The conditions were unpredictable. Some shows were packed and electric. Others were quiet enough to hear bottles clinking in the back. He played through bad sound systems, broken lights, half-working speakers, and stages that were really just planks of wood balanced on crates. In some places, he'd perform so close to the crowd that strangers could practically reach out and grab his guitar. That might break some artists, but for today, Blake Shelton stands in a completely different chapter of his life. One that looks nothing like the wild years he spent grinding through tiny venues or the peak era where he was selling out massive arenas across the country. He's not chasing the next giant stage anymore, and he isn't trying to compete with the new generation racing towards stadium fame. Instead, he's settling into a phase built on intention, balance, and a little more peace than the old days ever allowed. With more than 30 number 1 singles behind him, Blake knows he's already carved out a legacy most artists can only dream about. The pressure to keep climbing just isn't part of his world anymore. He still hits big festivals, still headlines arenas, and he's gearing up for another run in Las Vegas, but he does it on his own terms. No endless tour schedules, no constant push to outdo whatever the newest star is doing. He's choosing quality over quantity, and you can tell he's comfortable in that choice. Fans have noticed this shift too. Online discussions often point out how Blake seems more relaxed these days, and some even speculate, clearly just speculation, that he's intentionally stepping back from the race that today's younger artists are sprinting through. But Blake himself hints at the truth. He's not trying to keep up with the new stadium wave because he already lived the life he wanted. The nonstop travel, the packed calendar, the constant pressure. He's done it all, and he doesn't feel the need to run at that pace anymore. What makes this new phase interesting is how grounded he sounds when he talks about it. Instead of chasing bigger crowds, he talks about enjoying the shows he does take on. Instead of looking for the next explosive moment, he's focused on the things that matter more to him now: family, time, and actually enjoying the work without burning himself out. For someone who spent decades on the road, that shift isn't just a career choice, it's a personal reset. And while today's rising stars are rewriting the rules of country touring, Blake is proving that you don't have to chase every new trend to stay relevant. He's stepping into a version of his career that feels steady, confident, and completely his own. And that sets the stage for an even bigger question about where country music is headed next.
Blake Shelton's reflections aren't just about his own journey, they reveal something much larger. Country music itself is evolving faster than ever. The rise of artists like Luke Combs and Bryan isn't an isolated trend, it's a signal that the game has changed completely. Stadiums that once seemed reserved for long career legends are now filled by artists in just a few years, riding the power of streaming, social media, and instant fan connection. To Blake, watching this unfold is both thrilling and a little surreal. The rules he knew no longer apply. He notes that today, fans don't just follow one hit, they memorize entire albums and expect to sing along at every show. The industry has shifted from a slow climb to an instant impact culture where momentum is everything. And for the new generation, that rapid rise isn't just about talent, it's about timing, exposure, and the ability to harness platforms that didn't exist a decade ago. Blake sees this as the new normal, a high-speed version of country music he could never have imagined at the start of his career. At the same time, his reflections remind us that the core of the genre hasn't disappeared. The passion, the connection with fans, and the love of performing remain constants. What's changed is the scale, the speed, and the spectacle. Blake's perspective bridges the old and the new, showing that even as stadiums get bigger and social media accelerates careers, the heart of country music still beats in every show, every song, and every fan cheering along. Ultimately, his reflections leave a bigger question for viewers. As the next generation rockets toward fame at unprecedented speed, will the essence of what made country music special survive? Or is this rapid-fire evolution shaping an entirely new era? Blake's journey, from small clubs to arenas, and now observing the stadium revolution, captures the story of a genre in transition and leaves us wondering what the next chapter will look like.
Blake Shelton's journey is more than just a story about one artist. It's a lens into the evolution of country music itself. From dusty dance halls and tiny bars to sold-out arenas and stadium shows, he's lived through every phase of the genre's transformation. And while today's stars are reaching heights faster than anyone could have imagined, Blake's reflections remind us that success isn't just about speed or scale. It's about the grind, the passion, and the connection to fans that lasts long after the spotlight fades. Watching him observe the rise of Luke Combs, Bryan, and other newcomers, we see both admiration and a hint of nostalgia. The industry has shifted dramatically, but the heart of country music, the stories, the energy, the bond between performer and audience, remains intact. Blake's story shows that even as the game changes, there's value in taking your own path, in appreciating the journey, and in finding your own version of success. So as the next generation of artists races towards stadium fame, we're left with a question. Will the rapid pace redefine the soul of country music, or will the timeless elements that Blake cherished continue to anchor it? One thing is certain. Whether it's a small club, a massive arena, or a stadium under the lights, country music will keep evolving, and Blake Shelton's career stands as a testament to its enduring spirit.